it's Stephanie here with a video for My Favorite Things. In today's video, I am wrapping up the Love is in the Air event that we've had on the blog and the YouTube for the past 3 days. And today we're going to create a romantic themed card. So for the first day we did kids and teachers, yesterday we did friends and coworkers, and today I wanted to switch it up completely and do something that looks romantic and can be given to your significant other. So for this card, we're going to be doing some stamping on some craft paper, and we're going to be using the watercolor flower stamp set along with some Sweet Tooth pigment ink. And we just are laying down a white base that we're going to work on once we have all of the ink down. So I just took one of the solid stamps from this set. This is a layering stamp, and this is meant to be the bottom layer. And this is the only stamp that we're actually going to use because I want the nice solid white area on the craft cardstock when I stamp it. So you can see here on my stamp that when I'm using pigment ink, it's a really opaque ink, and when I stamp it onto the cardstock here, it's actually going to sit on the paper. It doesn't go into the paper like a dye ink would, so it's very slow drying. So you just want to keep that in mind because it will make a mess if you kind of smudge around in it. So you just want to be careful not to touch it while it's drying, and then I also recommend taking a heat gun and kind of heat setting it once you have all the stamping done. So what I'm doing is I'm just stamping a cluster of flowers, and I'm not worrying about them overlapping, even though you can kind of see the stamp lines as they overlap. You're not going to see any of that when we're done creating this card, so don't worry at all about that. You just kind of want to create a cluster of flowers and then leaves, and then just till you're kind of happy with the design. So put as many leaves as you want around the flowers, and I did 3 flowers just because I like the odd grouping. So now that I have my flowers all stamped and I've let this dry, and I've also added a little bit of heat with my heat gun to make sure it's fully dry, we're going to do some watercoloring on top. So I have a round number 0 brush, and I have my Prima Confections watercolors, and rather than using the layering stamps and stamping on top of these with the stamps, we're going to watercolor the flowers on. And this is super easy to do. If you can put paint on a paintbrush, you can definitely do this because it's literally just kind of starting in the center of the flower area. I like to kind of put a dot down in the center just to kind of start me off. And then I just like to take my brush and just kind of do like little lines, like half circles almost, all the way around. So I just keep going in a circle and adding these little lines of color. And you can do thick lines, you can do thin lines, you can do lines with more water, which will make them kind of spread out a little bit more, or you can do more pigmented, defined lines by having less water on your brush. I wanted to add a little bit of variation to the color of the flowers, so I did take some black ink and mixed it in with the red just to kind of darken it up a bit and get more of a burgundy color. And I'm going around and I'm doing the exact same process. I'm just taking my paintbrush into the paint, adding more water when I want it a little bit more loose, and then when I want it more defined, I'm using less water. And I'm just going around the flowers until I have that whole entire white area finished. And you can see as I'm doing this, I'm making sure to kind of define what is each flower. So even though when we didn't have any paint and we just had the ink there and it was just a big blob of ink, now we're actually defining everything and making it look like we have 3 specific flowers, and then we're also going to do the same thing for the leaves. And the great thing about having that pigment ink stamped beforehand is we get the really nice white highlights in the flowers because that white ink is showing through any of the areas that we're not adding color. So it's just a really great way to paint on craft cardstock and really make the paint colors pop and have a nice highlight look to it because we have that white ink kind of showing through. Now once I had all 3 flowers done with the red, I did take some black and just did some centers of the flowers just to kind of add a little bit more detail to them. And now I'm taking some green ink and I'm doing the leaves. And for the leaves, I'm just kind of doing straight lines up and down. I'm kind of going around the edge of the leaf, and then I'm just taking my brush and doing some straight lines from the middle of the leaf right to the tip. And I'm doing that for all of the leaves, and then once again adding a touch of black to my green just to give a little bit of shading and add some definition to these leaves. And then once I have those painted, I'm going to let this sit aside and completely dry before we move on to the next stage of the card. So now that we have it dry, I am going to do some die cutting. So I have this heart from the Flop Card Heart Dynamics, and I'm actually going to cut right through all of this painting we did. And that seems super scary, I know, because we don't want to wreck what we've done, but it's all going to work out in the end because we're actually just going to put this right back into the card. I just wanted this stitched heart detail in the background with the flowers. So we're just going to reinsert this right back in, and you're not even going to barely know that we cut it, except you have this fun heart detail around it. Now, the heart on its own with the flowers is beautiful as well, so if you wanted to, you could completely just use the heart with the rose detail on it. I think it's just as beautiful. So I took a little bit of brown ink and ran it around the edge of the heart just to give it a little bit of definition and make it stand out a little bit more. I really want that heart to be visible. And then I'm going to take the negative piece and I'm going to completely cover it with adhesive and add it to my card base. I really love the look of craft against steel gray cardstock. I just think it's so pretty, and I just thought with the roses and all of the detail that we have on the front of this, it paired so perfectly together. So I really love the look of this. So I adhered that on, and then I'm just adding my adhesive to the heart as well. And then we're going to adhere that right back into the die cut area. So everything is still completely smooth, and it still looks like one panel of cardstock, but we have that great detail with the heart cut out, especially because it has the stitch detail on the edge. Now for the sentiment, I'm going to use the Knight in Shining Armor stamp set, and I want to use You're My Happily Ever After. I thought that was a beautiful sentiment that pairs perfectly with this set. So I'm using Versamark ink to ink up this sentiment, and then I'm going to stamp it on the same steel gray color that I used for the card base. And then I'm going to add some white embossing powder on top of the sentiment, and I'm going to heat set that. And that's going to give me a really nice, beautiful white sentiment against the gray cardstock. I just love how it kind of pops right off of that dark color. And then to adhere the sentiment strip, I'm just using some foam tape, and I'm just going ahead and adhering this directly over the bottom area of the flowers. I love the pop of gray on top of the flowers. I just think it adds even more to the card, and I just think it looks so elegant and pretty. And then to finish it off, I'm going to add a few clear sequins for a bit of dimension and to kind of fill up the area around the heart detail, and then that is going to complete our romantic card. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to check out a couple more videos, you can click on the screen here, and I will see you in the next one.